So let's go to introduction to East Asian art, and let me turn on share my videos on PowerPoint. And so an overview of history and material culture, the map of China. So when I say history of East Asian costume, I am not talking about Southeast Asia or South Asia. The reason I designed my class focusing only on East Asia, and even when I say East Asia, it's more like along Shanghai, this Yangtze River area, and the Yellow River area, and then Korean Peninsula, and then Japan is somewhere here. Japan, the reason I made it is in terms of the climate, they belong to somewhat similar weather climate zones. Southeast Asia, especially below of Yangtze River, like Guangzhou or Hong Kong, and then coming to Southeast Asia, as you can imagine, these are semi-tropical. Weather is totally different, and because of that, their plants are quite different. And because plants are different, their fabrics, like a fiber, and the fabrics will be different. So I cannot cover all of them. And also, China as a cultural power, or we use this term called hegemony. So let me go back to my pen. Hegemony. It's influence, right? Hegemony. China is important, so we will talk a lot about those official dress system by the imperial family, and then it influences the royal family of Korean Peninsula and Japan. Those kind of, the formal wear system. So that's why I'm focusing only on East Asian countries. But again, you have to bear in mind that regional variations always exist. So for example, Xi'an used to be capital for a long time, and then eventually it will move to Beijing. So if there is an official dress system coming down from Beijing, people in Beijing or the court would be the closest to the original mandate of the dress system. And then people in Shanghai and Hangzhou, these are again very fashionable towns of fashion people. Like if you really ask where can you find the fashion people in prehistoric China, I would say you should go to Shanghai or Hangzhou. So here, people wear a little bit more embellished manner, or a little bit different from the official court. So those kind of things. So anyhow, we are going to focus on this area. The reason is the climate. So again, in this class, I want you to think about seasonal changes. Like we ask New Yorkers, what do you wear? And they say black, right? Like we wear black all year around. But if you ask East Asian people, what do you wear? Then they will say, which season are you talking about? Because summer clothes are very different from the winter clothes, or spring and autumn clothes. And what I mean by seasonal, here, traditionally, it's not about the 4 seasons that we are talking about. It's more like they are, how do you call it, festivals and feasts, right? Like festivals. So usually, traditionally, there are 24 festival seasons. So that means you also wear your clothes, if you are really high social class, change with this. And like think about people wearing mink fur coat in the middle of April, right? I mean, how obnoxious that is, right? April. Just like here in Chinese culture, for example, highly sophisticated people in Shanghai and Hangzhou, you show up in, for example, purple clothes in April. People will all think that, oh my goodness, what is this people thinking? Maybe he's lost his mind, kind of thing, right? Purple is the imperial color. Even though you can dye it, you never wear it, right? So there are seasonal colors or seasonal variations, and we will read those in Genji Monogatari. So that's something that you should bear in mind. So it's limited to East Asian culture, Northeast Asia. So one thing I should mention is clothing culture is extremely lavish in East Asian culture. The reason is China, especially this Yellow River area, the ancient civilization started as early as 3000 BCE. Do you know the word BCE? Before Common Era. From now, it was 5,000 years ago, right? Like a zero, and we are now 2000 here. So if you add 2020 and then another 3,000, it was 5,000 years ago, right? Anyhow, so China is one of those ancient civilizations because the land along this Yellow River is extremely fertile. You don't do a lot of efforts to grow crops, but it grows well. You have source to river, so it grows well. So obviously, if you have ancient civilizations, it also tells us, like a bronze, metallurgy and other things, clothing culture was very rich. And then just talking about the people. So when you think about clothing, you also have to think about people's size, right? It sounds a little strange, but we cannot omit the race and ethnicity of a people. So you have to think about the people. So what kind of people are we talking about? Mongoloid, the yellow, predominantly Mongoloid. In a politically incorrect word, you may say yellow people, but politically correct and academic way, they belong to Mongoloid people. But both East Asian and Southeast Asian, they are Mongoloid people. They are also a little bit different. So northern part is called the Sinodont, and then the southern part is Sondadont. And then even though Southeast Asian people, let's say people from Myanmar or Thailand, may look like Polynesians in New Zealand and Australia, they also have a subset in New Zealand and Polynesia. Like people from Guam, for example, would be a little bit different. People from Hawaii, a little bit different from the Southeast Asia. In India itself is full of different races and ethnicity, but we are not doing India. So in one case, even within Japan, we also had Ainu people. So Ainu people came from Alaska. Like here, do you see the Hokkaido? Not Alaska, like the red part. So this refers to people in Ainu. So they look more Siberians, or in terms of their DNA composition, genetic composition, they actually belong to Sondadont Mongoloid, like Southeast Asia. But anyhow, they look different, and people were aware of it. And before they were exposed to mainland culture of Japan, they had their own ethnic lifestyle. So they wore this. It's a Asian style flat garment, right? Flat robe, but the patterns are extremely unique to their own community. And then later on, we are going to see that they use the natural fibers from trees, because Hokkaido is really cold. So they grew their own natural fibers out of trees as opposed to plants. So 19th century, for example, Japanese people, mainland people thought Ainu people look a little bit different. They have a lot of hair, and they wear like the shabby, natural clothes. And this is 1902 photograph, black and white photographs by anthropologists. So within each region, there is also a little bit of difference. Now, if we go to after 1850s, the modern period, I want you to bear in mind that there is a superpower called the Japanese Empire. So this will be very important. So in the Pacific Ocean, you see the Japan as a superpower and empire, and then it ruled Korea and then the coastal area of China, and then Southeast Asia, and then New Zealand, Saipan, Guam, in all this area. And then if you go to the Atlantic Ocean on the other side, then you have England, who had a large territory in India, and then some parts of Africa, and then Canada. Canada is still part of UK, right? So if there was the small island in Britain. Then you have this island in Japan that was a superpower. So if we talk about modern fashion, especially industrial manufacturing of clothes, the dominant forces are either British or Japanese systems. So we will discuss those. So in Japan, in China, we will usually talk a lot about these coastal cities. So again, coastal cities, the lifestyle is a little bit different from the inner states or inner cities. So Beijing is a political capital from, let's say, Yuan dynasty that is around 13th century on. But up until the 13th century, let's say 3000 BCE, to all the way to the, let's say, 1300s, Xi'an. So the Xi'an was the capital for a long time. And then they moved to Beijing. But economically, when you think about the clothing and fashion culture, it's built upon great wealth, right? Or material wealth. So these coastal cities are important. And as I tell you later, where is the Shanghai? So Shanghai, and then Xuzhou and Hangzhou, these are centers of silk trade. Silk, as we are going to see later, the silkworms and then the mulberry trees, they grow well in a relatively warm climate zone. So it's usually grown along here.